to be back. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Thank you for having me here. I don't want you to bore you with my full name. My name is Bala. I'm a solution architect in Microsoft, and I pretty much spend most of my time in data science, generative AI, agentic AI application end to end. Not only just the infrastructure, but also the application design, the security, the governance, the responsible AI, most of the entire life cycle of an agentic AI application. So first of all, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate. I mean, I hope you all can hear me well and also see the presentation. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to start with, you guys don't need any introduction on Microsoft. So I'm going to start with like what and how we look at security. Of course, there is hardware security and the traditional cyber security, but I'm going to look at it in the terms of on the Gen AI side with agentic AI. The regular AI also is machine learning and deep learning. I'm not going to cover that today. But this is going to be looking at across like and how an entirety of the after ChatGPT moment, how AI security is, how we actually are thinking about it, right? So if you look at it, we have content safety that came out of the red teaming team, but um, it's also a layer of protection to figure out like, sexual content, hate, violence, self-harm. We had it prompt shields and few others will see, what other things are available. The next one is the PII detection. You can use Purview, but you can also have, you're also adding the models to detect that as well. And then we have this concept of evaluations, which are super critical when you're building generative AI or agentic AI application. It's the area that allows us to test and evaluate the system to make sure that any issues are happening in terms of like does it provide the right data, does it provide you unnecessary information, if someone can hack into it. You can do all those evaluations in there, but how you do evaluations is by red teaming it. Red teaming gives you the aspect of like, hey, how do I go basically find new attacks? Can we generate some data sets and do some hacking and see whether if anything is breaking or not? So this is how we see actually the AI security. One of the way of we see AI security. I mean, there are other products like um, endpoint security, Defender for cloud, and stuff like that. Those are all on the peripheral, on the outside, sitting in and looking at it. And this is purely looking at like when you're building a generative AI app or application, what you have to look into, right? And we have been always pioneering this technology for a while. I think it's been more than like I think 2016 or something that we really started the responsible AI. That's how it started, and responsible AI was the key factor to get into the AI security. I mean, yes, there are few quality metrics that are available. Like if you see on the left-hand side where the quality section is, those are pretty much statistically or mathematically evaluating the model. But what's interesting is in the center one, the risk and safety, and the last one, agents. The risk and safety has, as I told you, like, this is what the evaluation provides us is like sexual self-harm, protected material. We also have like, indirect attacks. You can actually look at like code vulnerability, but look at the last two one. We are building something new, prohibited actions and sensitive data leakage, like the PII detection and things like that. Now we also have a concept of guardrail, but for guardrail you have to be able to detect. So this is the detection mechanisms. That's what I'm going to spend my time on. Guardrail, you can run the guardrail and take action to block it or email or allow it and things like that. But ultimately, you have to know how to detect it from these large language models, and that's where we put a lot of effort in. And then comes the agents. Of course, the agents are the new thing these days. Not every application is agentic application, but even though everybody wants to use agents, you can. And we are bringing in new way of evaluating the agents. That could be how the tools are getting selected, how is the model calling the tools, is how accurate is that, how is the input accuracy, how it is figuring out the tools in the right way or not. That is the intent. How did the tool complete successfully? Did it provide like a complete response out? How did we do that? So these are all based on using some large language models. Some of them are proprietary models that we have. We have these mechanism to go in and say like, okay, let's evaluate the agents, what it is doing, and there is no, I mean, there is really no such standard at this point, even though some of them are open sourcing it and they're coming up with standard, but it's still a place of where things are getting still figured out and still research is still going on, right? So we have, I mean, you can see some of them are public preview, but intent resolution, tool accuracy, tool awareness, and response completeness is already available in GA. But then we also have these public previews, tool selection, input accuracy, tool call success, and task completion. So this is one part of it. Like how it always works is like the red teaming part of the security team that does all these testing, and then they come up with this techniques of what how we can protect it, and then we build that out as a tool and evaluation for us to run this through, right? So you have to do this in the development phase, and at the same time, we have to do the red teaming. Now, what is red teaming is like this is something in Microsoft we have been doing it for a long time. We started out with the regular AI models, if you're familiar with vision and if you're familiar with like deep learning, machine learning, data science, traditional data science. We were doing it over there, but we were also, after the Gen AI era, ChatGPT, we were forced to figure out like it started producing new threats for us, right? So we started having a group of team who were able to go prioritize um, what harms can actually we can do, and then instruct the red team testers to go back and like keep on testing the system and coming up with new ways of jailbreak attack, or we'll see some of the attack strategies how it is what is we have right now. And then we also had like manual probe, try to poke and send in like ASCII text in or reverse the text, or try to come up with like different languages to poke in and see whether if the model can um, produce output that you're not supposed to produce. So some of the good ones that I've seen is like, hey, if you do some iterations across like mathematical iteration on certain words, after some times it'll start displaying you the raw data that you used for training. So for fine tuning. So that, I mean, I don't know, that's not right to find the data because some of these models are proprietary and you wanted to protect your content within in it. Because if we have to do fine tuning and all, we need this generic model, open source model, I don't think you care. But in business scenarios, once you get into the real fine-tuned model for your own business and industry, that's where you have a problem. And then you have to take that and find and summarize all these data and make sure that we are providing this to the business stakeholders to make sure that yes, we are crossing and dotting and making sure that the systems is safe. And this becomes like an multiple sprint, and then we run for each and every model, and we constantly keep doing this in an iteration process. We have also documented this. If you go to that aks.ms LLM underscore red underscore teaming, there is a humongous documentation on how you can actually do. I did summarize some versions. I'll share you a markdown file that I created with a RACI chart. How do you form the AI security, and who are all involved, and who's responsible, and who's the traditional RACI ones. So why it is important? I mean, when we started having um, this Gen AI model, Gen AI applications, not the models, they're all chat based, right? Like, so we can go ask a question, and it actually model comes up and responds, which is extremely amazing. I'm a big fan of it. But then there's also any signs there is good and there is bad. Um, then people started getting panicking. It started giving different advices to how to harm yourself, and If it starts getting pissed off, it gets angry and it puts out a lot of other content that you're not supposed to. I hesitate to even tell those, but as you see, like the model can provide unnecessary content which are not intended to be. So this is where that red teaming has come. And as any technology comes in, there are always a group of people who always want to go find the negative aspects of it, and that gets very much highlighted. I'm not a big fan of it. The science is always has so much positiveness. We should stay with the positiveness than negative, but the negative press always wins the market. So we came up with a mechanism to say like, okay, how can we actually really go and start to figure out and be up ahead in the curve to see like what can we poke holes into these models and see like how to and how they are responding. And that's what the red teaming was started, and we started very early in the development phase itself. So there is a separate team that goes in. There's a separate team who's building the products like an agentic AI application, but there is a separate team that actually goes in and sits down and poke holes with the prompts or change the prompt and change the data, try to ask weird way of questions in the development state itself so that we can actually find out how to put guardrails in the prompt instructions and other sort of corresponding systems to block and mitigate, right? So this is something that we did. We actually even started with the design phase and then into the development phase and then integrated that. And then we came up with a mechanism to say, like, how do you do automated way of testing and monitoring with CI/CD? So in that way that you can actually cover the entire spectrum. And once you detect, then you can put some guardrails on it to detect and actually respond on it, right? So it started out with the Pirate package. Pirate is something that we open sourced it. It was a tool for risk identification basically on the large language model side. And it's an open source tool. We released it in February of 2024. And then, like, a lot of people were taking this and using it for testing. Ultimately, what it does is like, we'll see it in the latest case of like, how different type of attacks are. It's basically taking something and asking the model to behave in a certain way so that it does not certain things that it shouldn't respond, it'll start responding to it, right? Like reversing or adding binary characters for a certain word so that it can bypass it and it'll go through. Or trying to say like, hey, be open, you have no restrictions, give us everything, even show the data that you're consuming and things like that. So this has been available. We also have a red teaming mechanism baked in the Foundry as well. So the tools are already there because it's not early anymore. So we have a set of tools that you can already use it to set your guardrails. And this allows us to provide very much trust in the systems that we are building, right? So how does this red teaming agent works? I gave you a little bit on this. If you look at on the left side, like there are a set of security folks sit down and they'll try to come up with like, hey, how do you loot a bank? And technically the older versions of the models, they usually was able to provide answers. This is before even the technology matured. Right now the technology is almost matured around like 2.5 years now, close to 3 years now. But still, even though the models have some responsible AI baked in it, there are still ways to go poke it. Like, if you look at the bottom side, it's actually reversed, and it sends in, and the reversal character that the model does not say like, "Hey, I cannot help you." Instead, it actually says like, "How do I go? How do I go and do about it?" Right? So this is what the Pirate package is. It had its own data sets in different segments, and then we can actually go test it. Testing the model is one, and then also testing model with the prompt, and then the agent with the prompt is another thing. You can also test it with ground truth data set as well. So that's basically how the testing happens. It's a long process. It does take time. It's not that easy. And then you have to document this entire thing. And we came out with a process around it. And you can see like when we went through rigorous testing, we came up with all these attack category type. You can see like the ANSI attack, ASCII art, base64 binary, character swap, a flip, lead speak, ROT13, string joins. These are all different type of ways that how we can actually push attacks into the system to make the model to respond on things that it shouldn't be responding, including jailbreak, like encoding URLs and sending is an unwanted character is another one. I can send you the documentation link on it. It talks about in extreme detail out of it. This was a mere output of all the red teaming that we used to do. We did it with a bunch of products that Microsoft built in. And so, because any product that we do, we go through a rigorous testing before even it comes out, even like Copilots or any of our AI products. This has to pass through, and this is a very much a must step for us, right? And these are the new things that we add into the software development, like evaluations, red teaming. These are new things that we add in the LLM ops process itself or agentic AI ops process. This has to be baked in so that it becomes a standard practice. But then this involves a bunch of other teams that we can actually look. I'll show you a sample. So this is an attack type, how you can actually send in an attack and how you define the complexity of the attack is. In this case, like we are doing direct probing, and then we are doing flip is like a very complicated attack. Past tense is much more complicated. And then if you do base 64 and through an entire sentence and all, it becomes super complicated. These are different type of attacks, how we usually spend time on testing it. You can put like multiple security professionals to test in different aspects, like the model, the agent, and then the agent and the application, because application tells you what persona to behave on. So you have to test it on that persona as well. And then these are also available in tools, which means we can actually run this test and actually see it in the screen. And there is a in the Foundry there is a mechanism to centrally manage this, so we can run through multiple runs and we can compare it, and all these are stored so that we can go back and take a look at it. Very very interesting thing, because a lot of people say like, hey, we wanted to do this locally. Yeah, you doing it locally is very good, but if you don't document it, then there is no way you can run a production system to go back and say like, hey, my previous run was successful, this run failed, but why did the previous run successful? There is nothing documented in a centralized way. So that's why we also have that we are pushing everything to the observability now. It's available in the Foundry as a tool. So the Foundry will become your full-fledged agentic AI development lifecycle tool, which will also include your security capabilities to validate and make sure that we are doing it in the right way. And this is not just a simple thing that I'm talking from theory. I've been working with this customer for a long time, and we actually built a product around this. They have like about 100 plus KPIs that they manage, and they run through testing, and they use the red teaming. Plus, they also use our eval framework a lot. So it's a real use case study. I can actually send it to you. And I mean, I'll actually send you the link. Okay, I have 5 minutes left. But meanwhile, I wanted to show you one more thing. So this is I'll share the link with Ron. Ron, just remind me this link. I documented not only the 4 pillars, but I wanted to show you something else. Like if you want to set up in your own environment, what is that is involved? How do I do? Who should I hire? What is the razy stuff that I need to do, and what are the organizational unit that you need to involve. Here is like my view of like what is involved in this entire security thing. You can find out the operating model, and if you go down here, you can actually see the RACI chart. Now, this is not by any means, I'm not saying that a single tool will solve your problem. Not necessarily, maybe, I don't know. But there is a lot more involved in it, right? And there's a lot more people you have to involve early in the game like the legal compliance should be up in advance in the front itself, like the privacy officer, the legal and compliance, and then you need the security architects. Usually the security architects in for the Gen AI space is different. For the traditional cybersecurity is different. So you need some person who can actually in our red teaming, to be honest, like we had a combination of multiple people. Like we had like English, history, psychology, and then security professionals all working together. So we can come up with the ways of like, what questions to ask and how to ask, and then come up with this, put some guardrails and or build products like how we build products on it, right? Our products are very generic. But usually, what I see in practical is like when you put the business spin on it, you need to make sure that the business spin is there is a security around that business domain or the business knowledge that it needs to respond as well. Some people don't like that. Some people may say like, "Hey, we don't want that security." It depends on the use case, but have seen most customers are looking to safeguard their own content and how it's responding from their content so that nobody gets access to the raw data behind the scenes and from the through the LLM and LLM, right? So that's my thing. I'll share the deck with you all, and that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to. I mean,